Chapter 51. Business Referrals. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Ningyan First Middle School. Qi Shuyan beamed with joy, swiping the dashboard and watching the sharp increase of orders. She didn't expect that the batch of talismans and magic weapons she had just uploaded in the morning would be sold out so quickly. The messages on her Taobao dashboard were all urging her to replenish her stock. It seemed that the free trial package provided before was effective, attracting many buyers and increasing the number of repeat customers. Qi Shuyan looked pensively at the outcome of the shopping frenzy. It seemed that her price was still too low. Maybe she could raise it a notch again. Shuyan, what are you looking at that's so funny? Why are you laughing so happily? A voice interrupted Qi Shuyan's thoughts. She looked up and saw Wang Wanting standing in front of her with her head stretched forward. Qi Shuyan immediately put away her phone and showed a shallow, alienated smile. It's just some memes on the internet trying to gain popularity on Weibo. Wow, Shuyan, you're too good. You even have the time to play on your phone now. How the hell are you going to get smarter? Wang Wanting looked envious and said, unlike us, who all have heavy, dark circles like pandas and who keep on working on a lot of questions. It's not so bad. Qi Shuyan smiled faintly. When Wang Wanting saw that Qi Shuyan didn't answer, she took a look around her desk and her eyes suddenly lit up. She took a set of exercise books from the upper left corner of Qi Shuyan's desk and flipped through them, then exclaimed, Shuyan, your review materials seem good. Can I borrow them for a few days? Of course not, Shuyan also has to study herself. How can you just borrow her review materials? As soon as Li Xiaoting entered the classroom, she heard Wang Wanting's words, took 3 steps, and snatched them away, stubbornly refusing. It's not your review material. Wang Wanting looked unhappily at Lin Xiaoting, then turned to plead with Qi Shuyan, Shuyan, please, please. You're already awesome. You can definitely do well on the college entrance exam. Can you lend it to me? Qi Shuyan gave a wee smile. It's not impossible. Why don't we exchange review materials instead? Can I see that book on your desk? Wang Wanting's eyes flickered, full of apology. Shuyan, I'm so sorry. I just bought that one and I haven't finished the exercises yet. Besides, Xiaoting is right. It's really not a good idea to exchange review materials now. She turned away and never said a single word about exchanging review materials. TSK, you can't even spare your own review materials, yet you have the nerve to borrow them from others. Li Xiaoting made a face at Wang Wanting, sat down and whispered in Qi Shuyan's ear, Shuyan, Shuyan, do you know who I just ran into in the restroom? Who did you meet? I ran into Wu Wenyun. I can't believe she really woke up and came to school. Oh. Shuyan, how can you react like this? Aren't you afraid she'll come after you again? Li Xiaoting looked at Qi Shuyan worriedly. She had heard that Wu Wenyun was petty and loved to bully and humiliate female students the most. Although it wasn't Qi Shuyan who put her in a coma, there was a chance she'd put the blame on Qi Shuyan. She shouldn't be free right now. Fusing bodies was no trivial matter. That's right, there's the entrance exam now. Lin Xiaoting thought so too, then gloated and snickered, Shuyan, I think there's something wrong with her brain. When I went to the bathroom, I saw her drinking water straight from the toilet faucet. Is she sick? Xiaoting, don't go to the bathroom on this floor in the future. When Qi Shuyan heard her, she turned her head with furrowed eyebrows, and instructed in a serious tone. Shuyan, why? It's not like the school is run by her family. Li Xiaoting was puzzled. Qi Shuyan was about to respond when a phone call came in. Qi Shuyan saw an unfamiliar number on the screen, but as soon as the person spoke, she knew who it was. Sister Shuyan, it's an emergency. Are you free right now? Come over to the hospital. Zhu Bucheng asked anxiously. Have you been hospitalized? Qi Shuyan was surprised. Was the talisman useless? It's not me who's in the hospital. It's an old man I know who's in the hospital right now. Can you come over and help me out? I'm not a doctor, I don't know how to treat patients. Qi Shuyan was baffled and was about to refuse, but when she heard his next sentence, she blinked and immediately agreed. After making the call, Zhu Buqing entered the VIP ward, took a look at Lin Chongchang, who was lying unconscious on the bed, and Lin Jingshi who was accompanying him by bed, and heaved a sigh. Lin Chongchang looked hale and hearty before and more vigorous with age, but he didn't expect him to just faint for no apparent reason. Lin Chongchang was originally from the capital and had been an old family friend. Their friendship was quite good, and he was considered their elder, so he was uncomfortable seeing him faint. All this time, the father and daughter, Lin Chongchang and Lin Jingshi, had been searching for that talisman master, and were about to go crazy. It might have been due to overthinking, but Lin Chongchang suddenly fell to the ground and didn't wake up. The past few days, they had consulted many famous doctors, but they couldn't even diagnose the cause of his illness. Zhu Buqing walked over to Qi Zhenbai, who was sitting on the sofa and taking a nap, put his hands in his pockets and said, "I called Sister Shuyan. She'll be here soon." Upon hearing this, Qi Zhenbai suddenly opened his eyes with a sharp glint and glanced at him. Zhu Buqing seemed afraid of his objection and hastily defended, "Doctors couldn't find anything anyway, so let Sister Shuyan take a look. Besides, didn't you investigate? She isn't the kind of person with ulterior motives at all." If Qi Zhenbai hadn't stopped him these days, he would have wanted to see Qi Shuyan long ago. Unfortunately, his friend's old problem had occurred again. He had always been seriously paranoid. "You really have confidence in her?" Qi Zhenbai raised a brow, his eyes cool. "That's for sure." Zhu Buqing grinned. "No wonder you're so stupid. You're always being schemed." Qi Zhenbai tugged at his lips and scoffed. Zhu Buqing was choked by Qi Zhenbai's words, appearing somewhat depressed. Although this investigation had nothing to do with Qi Shuyan, it wasn't an accident. It was the covert machinations of an ambitious man. He was his father's only son with 3 uncles and aunts. Among the brothers, his father was the most successful, earning a share of the family fortune, but his 5th uncle was the most favored. As 5th uncle was the treasure of the Zhu family's head, his grandfather, and a child who was conceived in his grandparents' old age, he was very much loved. Once, before he was even born, his grandfather wanted to let his youngest child be adopted by his father. But because he was born, his father refused and his grandfather also had nothing to say. But some time ago, his grandfather raised the same old topic again. Naturally, his parents disagreed, finding it absurd. It was for this reason that his home was in an unhappy mess. Zhu Buqing had never imagined that this matter would have anything to do with his young uncle, who was about his age. If Zhenbai hadn't investigated thoroughly in private, he would have also been kept in the dark. Despite this, Zhu Buqing felt somewhat suffocated, but when he turned around, seeing the figure at the door, he immediately showed a huge, bright smile. "Sister Shuyan, you're finally here." Chapter 52. Distrust. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Zhu Buqing saw Qi Shuyan standing at the door of the ward, he smiled and his handsome face brightened like a flower, his eyes glowing as he grinned toothily. He quickly and eagerly welcomed her. "Sister Shuyan, at this time of the day, you must have skipped classes to come here, right?" Qi Shuyan nodded, raising her round eyes to sweep a glance at Zhu Buqing. The thick, black mist hovering over him had almost dissipated and only little wisps of light, black mist remained. Her brows wrinkled and traces of doubt flashed in her eyes. It was reasonable to say that after such a life and death catastrophe, this black, cadaveric qi should have almost dissipated. Why were there still remnants? "Sister Qi Shuyan, you're too terrific. By the way, did you bring that safety talisman? Give me some more. You have no idea how I've been suffering these past few days. Without your safety talisman, I didn't even dare to go outside." I'm tired of seeing Jinbai whenever I look up, even if he's good. Looking. Zhu Buqing's eyes were glowing with excitement and anticipation as he said this. Qi Shuyan was a bit overwhelmed by Zhu Buqing's enthusiasm, and her mouth twitched. She felt that if Zhu Buqing had a tail, there would be no doubt he would have wagged it with glee. She took out some talismans from her school bag and picked out a few. Zhu Buqing's eyes immediately burned as bright as a light bulb when he saw her movements. However, seeing that she only picked a few pieces and seemed to be putting the rest back, streaks of urgency flashed in his scorching eyes. Without thinking, he grabbed Qi Shuyan's wrist. Sister Shuyan, how can this be enough? If it's okay with you, can you sell them all to me? Qi Shuyan appeared stunned and paused for a moment. Obviously, she didn't expect Zhu Buqing to grab her wrist. She felt a little uncomfortable being held by such a large man and was about to shake him off. When Zhu Buqing's grip was rudely slapped away by Qi Jinbai, who had unknowingly been standing behind him. He glared at the fidgety Zhu Buqing with a pair of cold, piercing, slender eyes, and his calm tone implied a warning. What are you yelling at? This is a hospital. Be quiet. Zhu Buqing hissed under his breath and swung his hand. Looking at the back of his reddened hand, he gritted his teeth in hatred. This tyrant. He looked at him accusingly, but upon meeting Qi Jinbai's glacial eyes, he quickly looked away. His heart was in tears, but he didn't dare to speak out. Can't he show me a bit of respect in front of Sister Shuyan? This guy's too much. Seeing Zhu Buqing hopping mad, but suppressed by Qi Jinbai's eyes and daring not to speak, Qi Shuyan was amused and the discomfort of being affronted just now also vanished. Can you give medical advice? Qi Jinbai's face was cold, and his dark eyes beneath those thick eyebrows seemingly made a stoic inspection tour over Qi Shuyan's crescent smile. No, I can't. Qi Shuyan subconsciously turned sideways, avoiding Qi Jinbai's intrusive gaze, and glancing at the hospital bed where an old man on a drip was lying unconscious. With a pair of large, round, feline eyes, she looked at Zhu Buqing and tilted her head, asking in serious confirmation, you said on the phone that you'd give me 10 million if I wake him up. Is that true? Zhu Buqing spaced out with tics at the corner of his eyes. He said so on the phone, but he was joking. He thought Sister Shuyan got his punchline, but it turned out that she came not for the sake of his face. He feigned to be heart-broken, clasping his heart, Sister Shuyan, it turned out that our friendship isn't worth these yellow and white worldly possessions. Qi Shuyan rolled her eyes inwardly. Did she look like an expert who cared nothing about material things? Her round feline eyes glared at Zhu Buqing. Talking about money ruins friendships, and besides, we don't have much of a friendship. She narrowed her eyes and was suddenly struck with a thought. She said unhappily, are you going to go back on your word? Believe it or not, I'll stick a bad luck talisman on you so that you'll be gagging on water and stepping on dog sh*t when you go out. The corners of Qi Jinbai and Zhu Buqing's eyes twitched. They exchanged looks and the shock in their eyes was no less than when they first learned of Qi Shuyan's ability. It was the first time they had ever seen someone exposing their mercenary side in such an extraordinary way. Looking at Qi Shuyan's lovely and boorish profiteer side, Zhu Buqing wasn't disgusted at all. He hastily said, Sister Shuyan, rest assured, I would never dare to renege on my promise to you. That's more like it. Qi Shuyan snorted. Sister Shuyan, you'd better take a look at the patient first. Zhu Buqing noticed Lin Jingshi, who was sitting by the bed, glancing over, and said hurriedly. Qi Shuyan nodded. Her professionalism was still there, but when she walked forward for a closer look, she was blocked. Lin Jingshi stopped Qi Shuyan from getting close to the hospital bed. Her face was unpleasant. She frowned and looked at Zhu Buqing with some dissatisfaction. Buqing, what's wrong with you? My dad needs rest, and the experts outside are still in a meeting to come up with a decision. What are you doing now, bringing insignificant people here? Lin Jingshi just watched Zhu Bucheng going out to make a phone call and thought he was going to hire some foreign experts. She didn't expect him to come back with a young girl. Zhu Bucheng was getting more and more unreliable. Older sister Jingshi, sister Xu Yan, isn't an insignificant person. Zhu Bucheng hurriedly explained, do you still remember the expert who last gave me Zhenbai's prescription? It's sister Xu Yan. Do not worry about her young age. She's quite capable. When Lin Jingshi heard Zhu Bucheng's explanation, her expression improved a bit, but she had just heard this little girl's profiteer remarks and was already somewhat disgusted with her. She only thought that this girl's means were powerful enough that even Zhu Bucheng was fooled. It isn't necessary anymore. Lin Jingshi looked tired and politely refused, besides, the experts outside are about to finish their meeting, so don't restrain this girl for the trouble. Zhu Bucheng touched his nose awkwardly. Although he was displeased with Lin Jingshi's attitude, in the end, the one on the hospital bed was her father. It wasn't good to step over the line as an outsider. He looked at Qi Shuyan in embarrassment, afraid that she would be angry. Fortunately, Qi Shuyan wasn't offended in the slightest. Instead, she smiled gently at him and shrugged. I guess I can't be of any help. After speaking, she turned to leave. Wait. A clear and low voice rang out. Qi Zhenbai, who had been staying out of it and standing tall and upright next to her, spoke, looking indifferent. Since you're here, don't let your trip be in vain. Lin Jingshi looked at Qi Zhenbai in astonishment. But when she met his cold slender eyes, she immediately averted her eyes. After a suspicious glance at Qi Shuyan, she opened her mouth, but ultimately said nothing and swallowed her discontent. She could treat Zhu Bucheng as a junior, but she absolutely didn't dare to treat Qi Zhenbai as one. Although few people in Fuzhou dared to not show respect to their Lin family, her father and Qi Zhenbai's family could be regarded as family. However, the Lin and Qi family were still far apart. What's more, this ninth young master Qi was too majestic. She had always been terrified of him and didn't dare to offend him in the slightest. Thus, despite her discontent, she didn't dare to say a word to drive someone away. Chapter 53. Mom, this sister is so awesome. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Masters, what's wrong with my dad? In the corner of her eye, Lin Jingshi saw that the experts and famous doctors, who had gone out for a meeting, had come in, and quickly greeted them nervously. The head doctor was in a bit of a quandary and forced a smile. Lin Chongchang, a tycoon in the antique jade industry, was lying on the bed. He was quite renowned in the capital. Even the largest antique jade shop he opened in Fuzhou was merely for fun. Seeing such a high-ranking figure, they naturally wanted to cure and attend to him at once. The benefits would also be great. Sadly, he just had a long discussion with those doctors outside and couldn't come up with anything. After their examination, except for Lin Chongchang being unconscious, his heart and everything seemed to be normal. They couldn't detect any disease at all. The head doctor played Tai Chi to placate, Miss Lin, please be patient. We still have to wait for the examination results. Otherwise, it'll be hard to draw conclusions. Lin Jingshi was a little disappointed. This was the outcome of their long discussion, but she still had to wait. Several famous doctors rushed in and out. Lin Jingshi wasn't a 3-year-old child. Seeing their attitude without identifying the cause after such a long deliberation, she was able to guess why. Her face changed drastically. She began to look anxious and panicked, immediately realizing that her father's illness was very complicated, such that these famous doctors couldn't even diagnose it. Zhu Bucheng watched in dismay as those famous doctors left. Obviously, he didn't expect that those experts wouldn't even be able to find out what ailment he had. He glanced at Lin Jingshi, who had lost her wits and went out dejectedly to make a phone call. He approached Qi Shuyan's ear and asked expectantly, Sister Shuyan, can you see something? So what if I can see something or not? Qi Shuyan stuffed a large white rabbit candy into her mouth, her tone flat and indifferent. Since the other party didn't seek her help, she wasn't in a rush. After all, they had nothing to do with her. Sister Shuyan, don't be angry. Sister Jingshi doesn't know your abilities, so she underestimated you. Zhu Buqing winked at her. Unlike me. All in all, there aren't many people left with discerning eyes like me. I'm sure you can see something. Zhu Buqing saw that Qi Shuyan didn't speak up, and immediately promised, don't worry. If you can really wake up Uncle Lin, the 10 million remuneration we talked about earlier still stands. Qi Shuyan's round eyes instantly lit up and her cheeks puffed up to confirm. You said it. Give me 10 million when he wakes up. You can't go back on your word. Zhu Buqing was between tears and laughter. He just lured her out with those words when she didn't respond. When it came to money, her eyes lit up. I couldn't tell that this little girl was so money-mad. He nodded. Of course. Don't you see? Zhenbai will testify. Qi Shuyan's eyes shifted over, just in time to meet Qi Zhenbai's sidelong, sharp gaze. His cold and sharp face was slightly tilted, his jaw raised in a cold and resolute curve, without a hint of emotion on his face. But was that gaze sizing her up? His scrutiny wasn't as sharp as before. Qi Shuyan quickly averted her gaze and curled her lips dismissively. She walked forward and looked at Lin Chongchang lying on the hospital bed, and she lifted his eyelids and mouth to check his condition. What are you doing? Lin Jingshi finished her phone call with Fan Ming, but as soon as she entered the room, she saw the strange little girl manhandling her father. She questioned furiously as she advanced and pushed Qi Shuyan, stumbling and almost falling over. Fortunately, the person behind her helped her with both hands. The process was very short, and when she stood firm, he let go. Qi Shuyan thought it was Zhu Buqing. She turned around and saw the man wrapped in purple qi. The tip of her nose sniffed his woody and refreshing scent mixed with the pleasant smell of herbal medicine. Qi Shuyan was startled. When had Qi Zhenbai walked so close to her? Her dark eyes glanced at the wisps of purple qi surrounding him and she felt giddy. She couldn't resist licking her lips with a gleam of longing. If only all this purple qi was hers. Qi Shuyan bit her lip and forcibly restrained the urge to pounce on him. Qi Zhenbai casually bowed his head and saw that the black and white of Qi Shuyan's eyes were hazy with longing. She nibbled on her plump, pink lips as if struggling with her urge to pounce. Qi Zhenbai hooked his lips slightly, as if he had expected this. His clear eyes turned dark as they roamed over her plump and full peach, petal-like lips. He suddenly wanted to cover them and find out what they really tasted like. Sister Jingshi, I'm the one who let Sister Shuyan take a look. Since those experts can't see anything, why don't you let her try it? The sound of Zhu Buqing's voice interrupted Qi Zhenbai's pleasant thoughts. With a faintly discernible frown, his tall, upright body retreated a few steps back without batting an eyelid. He seemed doubtful and perplexed, and the emotions beneath his eyes were like a bottomless pit. Buqing, I know you mean well, but the situation is chaotic enough, so don't add to it. Fan Ming will soon contact a group of more capable specialists. I believe everything will be solved easily. Lin Jingshi looked weary and said in a fretful and impatient manner. Zhu Buqing still wanted to argue, but Lin Jingshi closed her eyes tiredly and crossed her hands in refusal. Let my dad be quiet. Zhu Buqing was a little pissed off at Lin Jingshi's refusal to cooperate, but what could he do? After all, Lin Jingshi was Lin Chongchang's daughter. He couldn't overstep his bounds, so he looked at Qi Shuyan in apology. Qi Shuyan didn't look at Zhu Buqing and rudely sneered. If you really let the group of experts, who your husband contacted, come and look at him, your father will probably die faster. Lin Jingshi's eyes quickly widened in fury. What nonsense are you talking about? It's really this grandfather's greatest misfortune to have a daughter like you. Qi Shuyan shook her head and shot with lightning speed. She circulated her internal true qi, and with her index and middle fingers close together, moved along Lin Chongchang's acupuncture points and cut his fingers. Lin Jingshi shook with fury at Qi Shuyan's words. Seeing that she was casually attacking her father, she was about to move forward to stop her, but Qi Shuyan was prepared this time. She raised her left hand and swept Lin Jingshi aside. Qi Shuyan held her breath and let her circulating true qi flow through Lin Chongchang's body. In the blink of an eye, the scarlet blood trickling down from the cut on his fingers turned black and a foul odor instantly permeated the ward. Lin Jingshi's back hurt when she was thrown against the wall. Enraged and utterly discomfited, she was about to question and block her menacingly, but when she saw the black, tainted blood flowing out of her father's fingertips, she was stupefied. Even her anger was put aside as she looked blankly at this wuxia-like healing of forcing out poisonous blood. Lin Haoxing, who just came running to the door, saw Qi Shuyan at a glance and skidded to a stop. His eyes widened and his cheeks immediately flushed red in excitement. His childish voice shot up and he yelled, "Older sister." He turned his head and rushed to Lin Jingshi excitedly. "Mom, this sister is the one who saved me last time. Sister is awesome." Chapter 54. Come to the rescue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Lin Jingshi heard Lin Haoxing, she instantly remembered the master who had saved Lin Haoxing and gifted him the jade pendant last time. She was so astonished that an egg could have fit in her open mouth. Crouching in disbelief, she hugged Lin Haoxing's small body and repeatedly asked anxiously, "Xingxing, are you sure you've got the right person? Look carefully, is it really this sister who saved you?" She couldn't be blamed for thinking too much. Even though she knew that the master was a woman, she thought that she would have been much older. Lin Haoxing blinked his big, sparkling eyes, turned his head, and considered Qi Shuyan seriously while firmly nodding his little head. "I'm not mistaken. It's sister who drove those bad guys away." Lin Jingshi immediately felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She stiffened and couldn't speak for a long time. Recalling her impatience just now, she just wanted to slap herself in the face. She never would have thought that the talisman master she and her father had been searching for all this time would be this young, unknown girl in front of her. "Mom, didn't you and Grandpa always want to see sister? Why don't you look happy now that you've met her?" Lin Haoxing scratched the back of his head in confusion. Hearing this, Lin Jingshi was instantly struck with a jolt. She looked apprehensively at Qi Shuyan, whom she couldn't tell was happy or angry, and waved her hands, stammering in denial. How could that be? Qi Zhenbai and Zhu Bucheng on the side were also nonplussed. Hearing Lin Haoxing's words, they were instantly reminded of the talisman master who Perfected Zhang had praised repeatedly. Perfected Zhang originally planned on staying for just a short 3 days, but because of this talisman master, whose whereabouts were elusive, he stayed in Fuzhou for a few more days. Unfortunately, their search was fruitless and he had to leave. Qi Zhenbai's cold, slender eyes beneath those thick brows moved erratically with fleeting traces of surprise on his face. But in the blink of an eye, he returned to his usual serious and cold demeanor. However, the jumpy Zhu Bucheng was another story. He didn't even try to hide his shock. He repeatedly circled around Qi Shuyan in wonder, as if looking at an alien, both surprised and delighted. "Sister Shuyan, why that you're too capable. So that was you before. I really didn't expect it to be you." Qi Shuyan faintly swept over Lin Jingshi, who was apprehensive, and then at Zhu Bucheng, who was jumping up and down happily, and instantly realized that the two should have known that she was Lin Haoxing's savior. But weren't their expressions switched? This child's mother looked overly terrified, but Zhu Bucheng, an outsider, was beaming with delight and surprise. Qi Shuyan really didn't know what Zhu Bucheng was so excited and happy about, and wordlessly reminded, "This old man will wake up soon." Sister Shuyan, is he going to be all right?" Zhu Bucheng quickly asked. Qi Shuyan looked at Zhu Bucheng like a fool. "How is that possible? He's been poisoned for so long. Only a fraction of the toxins can be extracted. He should wake up today, but by the looks of it, he won't live much longer, 2 or 3 years at most. After speaking, she walked out. She was one step out of the doorway of the ward when someone shouted at her from behind. "Master, please stay." Lin Jingshi just heard Qi Shuyan's last few words, and was instantly flabbergasted. Seeing that she was about to leave, she turned pale with fright. She couldn't care less about her predicament and hurriedly ran forward to stop her. Qi Shuyan raised her eyebrows, looking cold. She didn't speak and just looked fixedly at her. Master, I just spoke out of turn. I really didn't mean to say those words. Please don't take it to heart." Lin Jingshi apologized remorsefully. "It doesn't matter. It's not the first time I've been taken for a swindler anyway." Lin Jingshi was flustered by Qi Shuyan's scrutiny and mumbled in a flurry, No, I was blind." "Master, how could you be a swindler? You're right to blame me, but my father is now at death's door. There's really nothing else I can do but, shamelessly beg you. Please save father." Lin Haoxing blinked, looking at his mother like this. He ran over and hugged Qi Shuyan's waist, and said in a milky voice. "Sister, don't go. Save Grandpa, please. I don't want anything to happen to Grandpa. Kid, it's very expensive for me to save people. I lost a lot when I saved you last time." Qi Shuyan squatted down and squeezed Lin Haoxing's soft, white cheeks. Seeing the dull jade pendant around his neck, she gave him a new one from her school bag. "Sister, I have money." Lin Haoxing patted his chest and assured, "I have plenty of money for you. Please save Grandpa." Qi Shuyan looked at Lin Haoxing's white, cute, little face and almost agreed, but noticed traces of sarcasm in Lin Jingshi's expectant eyes. To be honest, she didn't care much about being treated as a swindler, but it was really rare to see a snob, self-righteous, and muddle-headed person like Lin Jingshi. What if I said it would take 40 million to cure him once and for all? Qi Shuyan seemed to be smiling, but her eyes slipped around Lin Jingshi as if nothing had happened. Lin Jingshi snapped back to her senses and smiled dryly. Although her family was rich, she couldn't take out so much working capital at the moment. She appealed for Zhu Bucheng's help with a wink, signaling him to help her say a few words. "It's only 40 million, I'll pay it." An old voice rang out in the ward. Lin Jingshi and the others turned around in surprise, only to find that Lin Chongchang, who had been lying unconscious in the hospital bed, had woken up, his closed eyes glinting sharply. "Dad, you're finally awake." Lin Jingshi wept with joy. Grandpa, you've woken up. That's great." Lin Haoxing was also excited and ran over like a cannonball, but Lin Jingshi warned, "Grandpa is still weak. Don't run amok. It's fine. My good grandson, Xingxing, come here." Lin Chongchang waved towards Lin Haoxing and touched his little face, before looking at Qi Shuyan. "Little girl, may I know what kind of illness I have? Can it be totally cured?" Although Lin Chongchang was unconscious just now, his mind was sober enough to hear sounds of the outside world. He naturally heard a lot of things, and even if he was surprised, he didn't doubt Qi Shuyan's ability. "You aren't sick with anything. You've been poisoned by a kind of purple moss, which is uncommon. The source is usually a toxin attached to antiques excavated from tombs. It's a chronic poison and a small dose is nothing. You won't have any reactions in a short period of time. But if you're fond of appreciating and playing with antique jade artifacts frequently, these little doses of poison can easily accumulate in the long term," Qi Shuyan explained patiently. "It's not difficult to permanently cure it, but it's also tricky. Many medicinal herbs are hard to find." Lin Chongchang frowned and suddenly returned to his normal self, smiling. "I see, thank you for clearing up the confusion, young friend. I wonder what herbs are needed. Feel free to make a list for us to find them. But I'll have to trouble you to prepare the antidote. Chapter 55. Zhu Buqing's Gratitude. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 55. Zhu Buqing's Gratitude. Qi Shuyan took her leave after settling this matter. When she walked out of the hospital, she didn't expect Qi Zhenbai and Zhu Buqing to catch up immediately afterwards. Sister Shuyan, why are you walking so fast? I haven't had time to thank you properly. As soon as Zhu Buqing caught sight of Qi Shuyan outside the hospital entrance, he breathed a sigh of relief and hurried over with his long legs to complain. Didn't you already thank me on the phone? Qi Shuyan smiled slightly. How does that work? Sister Shuyan, you really didn't know how frightened I was when my sports car fell off the overpass and was burned to smithereens. If it wasn't for your safety talisman, I wouldn't be standing safe and sound in front of you worry-free. To this day, Zhu Buqing was still terrified whenever he recalled the car accident that day. His excited voice rose a notch higher, drawing passers-by to frequently look back. The fact was, the three's face value was too high. As Zhu Buqing spoke, his eyes glistened and were glued to Qi Shuyan's school bag. He hurriedly said in excitement, Right, Sister Shuyan, do you have a safety talisman with you? Sell me as many as you have. You don't know, but I can hardly go out without your talisman now. Qi Shuyan looked at Zhu Buqing, who couldn't hold himself back, and was secretly amused. There are a lot of people here. We'd better find a place where we can talk. Qi Zhenbai, who was standing silently on the side, suggested. Right, Zhenbai is right. Look how excited I am that I've forgotten everything. I remember there's a nice restaurant nearby. Zhu Buqing patted his head, smiled, and echoed. Sister Shuyan, I narrowly escaped death all thanks to you. You must do me the honor. Qi Shuyan just wanted to refuse, then swept a glance at the traces of pale, black mist lingering on Zhu Buqing. Perplexed, her brows knitted together, and without thinking for long, she nodded. Okay. She really couldn't understand why Zhu Buqing, who had obviously escaped a life and death calamity, still had a few wisps of black, cadaveric qi left. It should have already totally dissipated. Seeing Qi Shuyan hesitate, Zhu Buqing stared nervously at her out of fear that she would reject him. Now that she had agreed, his smile widened, then he wrapped his arm around her shoulder. Sister Shuyan, you're so cool. I just love how you don't mince things. That when Qi Zhenbai on the side saw this scene, his handsome and profound face became a bit gloomy. His thick brows twisted into 3 straight lines such that the crease could pinch mosquitoes to death. He stared fiercely at Zhu Buqing's arm on Qi Shuyan's shoulder. It was an extreme eyesore. The thick dot-headed Zhu Buqing was oblivious to his friend's emotions. His thoughts were all wrapped around Qi Shuyan, asking 7 or 8 questions all the way. He chatted endlessly, almost as if he wanted to dig out the bottom of Qi Shuyan's heart. At the restaurant, Zhu Buqing's gaze was as scorching hot as a light bulb, sweeping a glance at Qi Shuyan's backpack from time to time. He rubbed his hands on his pants and eventually couldn't help but say, Sister Shuyan, don't keep me in suspense. How many safety talismans and disaster ward magic weapons do you have? By the way, I think that boy, Haoxing's jade pendant seems pretty good too. Qi Shuyan felt a little helpless. You've hinted it explicitly many times. But she could understand. After all, once bitten by a snake, one would fear rope for 10 years. She fished out a stack of talismans and engraved jade pendants from her bag. Zhu Buqing immediately wrapped up the only remaining 10 safety talismans and 3 jade pendants engraved with magic arrays from Qi Shuyan's school bag in one breath. After receiving the protection and safety talismans, the gloom and anxiety on his handsome face was dispelled, revealing a light-hearted smile. Zhenbai, I told you so. I've got discerning eyes. I was right in asking Sister Shuyan to handle the matter this time. You still suspected this and that. Your paranoia is too serious. You also had to investigate. Once Zhu Bucheng was relaxed and happy, he started talking nonsense without restraints. Qi Zhenbai's glacial, slender eyes were like cold electricity as they shot daggers at him. Zhu Bucheng hurriedly covered his mouth in fright, cutting off the half part of his sentence. He then realized that what he uttered was inappropriate. Well said. Why don't you continue? Qi Shuyan raised a brow, looking dull and natural. Her tourmaline eyes inspected the two, concealing a sharp edge and practically taking a panoramic view of their emotions. Her eyes roved over them and fixed especially on Qi Zhenbai's face for several seconds. Ahem, I mean we believe in your abilities, but we want to have a concrete understanding of your circumstances, so we investigated a little bit. Zhu Bucheng smiled in embarrassment. It turned out to be the case. I thought you took my words as a joke again. There was no hint of emotion in Qi Shuyan's voice. She glanced at Zhu Bucheng, who was flustered and short of breath, and set her bright eyes on Qi Zhenbai, who until now remained deadpan, then spoke calmly. However, her words could drive one mad. But yeah, it's better to be honest, less curious, study more, believe in science, and eradicate feudal superstitions. Young Master Qi, right? Qi Shuyan deliberately blinked at Qi Zhenbai as she said the last line. Zhu Bucheng was about to choke to death on his own saliva, looking rather quaint. Sister Shuyan dared to use Qi Zhenbai's words last time against him. She is the first ever to do so. She's really awesome. Qi Zhenbai wasn't embarrassed at all. His every gesture was graceful and gorgeous, and his unmistakably handsome countenance betrayed nothing. Tugging lightly on his thin, blood red lips, he quipped, if your fortune-telling ability was as good as your glib talk, I wouldn't have gone so far as to say that. Qi Shuyan was stunned and reacted quickly. Her round, large, feline eyes glared at him as she smiled back in anger. The angrier she was, the calmer her face. Was he mocking her for failing to practice her mystical arts and only had limited skills? All of a sudden, she recalled her last defeat in fortune-telling. I admit defeat for my fortune-telling last time, but it can't all be attributed to ability. After all, there are many destinies that are extremely special. Qi Shuyan took a deep breath and stressed the statement, but it sounded a lot like she was justifying her smattering abilities against Qi Zhenbai's seemingly cheerful expression. Her eyes were as calm as a lake, unflappable and not the least bit afraid. When Qi Zhenbai, who was toying with a small porcelain cup in his hand, saw that Qi Shuyan had been clearly provoked, but quickly regained her composure, a shallow smile quickly appeared on his face. Without any emotion on his face, his eyes wandered over her pink lips and fair face, yet he nodded as if he was taking it seriously. It looked much like a mature adult dealing perfunctorily with a naughty and mischievous kid. It was very insincere. Qi Shuyan was instantly enraged by his perfunctory nod and she gritted her teeth. But young Master Qi, I'd like to try again. Please give me another chance to calculate. She had to wash away her shame this time. Chapter 56. Underhanded plot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Qi Zhenbai watched as she looked at him with her wide, round, feline eyes, focusing completely on him alone, and felt even more happy. The smile beneath his eyes grew deeper, with his partly drooping long, thick, and delicate lashes masking it. He covered his slightly upturned lips with a fist, as if considering whether to agree. However, Zhu Bucheng took Qi Zhenbai's bow and reticence as a silent rejection. In fear that Qi Shuyan would be embarrassed and offended, he hurriedly pitched in to smooth things over. Sister Shuyan, you gave Zhenbai a divination last time, so it's now my turn. You can't be biased, ha. Qi Shuyan looked at Zhu Bucheng as if sweeping a glance at his glabella. She had some doubts, but without batting an eyelid, she joked, fine, I'll help you calculate this time, but you can't laugh at me if I can't do it. In fact, she had long wanted to perform a divination for Zhu Bucheng. Since he brought it up first, it saved her the trouble. Seeing that the atmosphere had eased, Zhu Bucheng was relieved, but secretly complained. Zhenbai is too disrespectful. Fearing that he would neglect his savior, he was even more energetic in cooperating, laughing heartily. How come? I'm begging for it, Sister Shuyan, so hurry up and calculate for me. Qi Shuyan pursed her lips and smiled, stretching 5 fingers towards him. Zhu Bucheng immediately fished out 500 cash from his wallet, all the while saying cheerfully, calculate slowly. I'm in no hurry. A few black lines slid down Qi Shuyan's forehead. Brother, you don't trust my fortune-telling skills, do you? But remembering the last failed fortune-telling experience, it was quite understandable. Do you want me to calculate a character or your birth characters? Let's calculate a character. Zhu Bucheng twirled a chopstick and dipped it into the water, then wrote the character, yen, on the table. Is this okay? Qi Shuyan nodded. Probably due to the blow of her defeat in fortune-telling last time, she stared at the character with a serious expression this time. After staring for a few seconds, she pinched her fingers and had some results in her mind. She heaved a sigh of relief and her eyebrows stretched a bit. She said she wasn't that bad. She had just made herself nervous. This Yen should be your original name, but your hand was blown up playing with a firecracker when you were a kid. You then encountered another fire incident and your father thought it was unlucky to have 2 fires in your name, as fire was related to both your accidents. So, he changed it to Cheng. With the earth character, you can beat fire. Qi Shuyan narrated neither too fast nor too slow. Zhu Bucheng's eyes flashed with suspicion. He casually wrote, yen. He couldn't remember most things when he was a child, so he couldn't judge whether she was telling the truth. Qi Shuyan didn't care about Zhu Bucheng's doubts and continued, you should have had an older brother, but unfortunately, he died young. Sister Shuyan, you've miscalculated. I'm the only one in my family and my parents never mentioned that I had other brothers. Zhu Bucheng began to speak and then hesitated. He did want to give Sister Shuyan a round of applause, but the problem was she said something that was too outrageous. Qi Shuyan didn't mind Zhu Bucheng's questioning at all. She sipped some tea to moisten her throat and continued without haste, I haven't finished yet. Your parents have a harmonious relationship, but there was a time when they had difficulty conceiving an heir. Your family tried to give up your grandfather's youngest son, your uncle, for adoption to your father, but because you were born, this matter was dropped. Zhu Bucheng's eyes widened in astonishment. Sister Shuyan was right about this. But did she really calculate it or had she just guessed it? He was at a loss, knowing that the adoption matter was known only to those within the Zhu family. There was no way that it could have been spread outside. Zhu Bucheng was torn, unsure whether to believe her or not. Of course, he trusted Sister Shuyan's character, but he couldn't rule out the possibility that her fortune-telling was erroneous. A familiar voice came, interrupting Zhu Bucheng's thoughts. He turned his head to see He Yuanzheng. Bucheng, dear boy, I can't believe I've run into you here. A young man came and patted Zhu Bucheng's shoulder, grinning happily ear to ear. Seeing Qi Zhenbai on the table, he also respectfully greeted young Master Qi. Qi Zhenbai, who seemed indifferent, didn't get up and only nodded to him. With that, He Yuanzheng was flattered. Yes, Yuanzheng, what a coincidence. How have you been? He Yuanzheng looked at Zhu Bucheng, who was spirited, with a few hints of doubt in his eyes. He had only seen him from afar and thought he was mistaken. Good, my foot. You've no idea how unlucky I've been lately. I almost died in a car accident a few days ago. When He Yuanzheng heard this, his eyes twinkled, and he was secretly relieved. It seemed to be working. He hastened to feign surprise and advised, you can't do it that way. Have you hung up that blessing chime I brought you last time? As a brother, I'm breaking out into a cold sweat for you. I hung it up long ago. But Yuanzheng, have you been cheated? I think it's useless. Zhu Bucheng said, depressed. How could that be? Didn't you say before that you wouldn't even lose sleep with it? You must have hung it in the wrong direction. Is it hanging in the northeast and southwest of your bedroom? Yes, I did as you instructed. Forget it. Though it didn't help much, it did improve my insomnia. He Yuanjing originally wanted to chat more with Zhu Bucheng, but after sneaking a glance at young Master Qi from the corner of his eye, he had some qualms in the end, so he left after exchanging a few pleasantries. Qi Shuyan watched as He Yuanjing's departed and sneered in her heart. Is this really a blessing or an invitation to ghosts? Looking at Zhu Bucheng's intimacy, her eyes dimmed silently. Qi Zhenbai and Zhu Bucheng drove Qi Shuyan back to school, and as they were about to say farewell, she stared at Zhu Bucheng for a moment. It wasn't until she saw Zhu Bucheng panic that she warned, if you really want to sleep soundly, throw away that string of wind chimes. After she said this, she left, leaving Zhu Bucheng in a state of confusion. Sister Shuyan, what did that mean? Do you remember when you started having bad luck? Qi Zhenbai didn't answer his question. Zhu Bucheng froze for a moment. Looking at their attitude, it penetrated a bit and his eyes instantly widened in incredulity. Is it that string of wind chimes? The more he thought about it, the more suspicious he became. It seemed that he had started to become unlucky after he received the wind chimes. Where are the talismans and jade pendants she gave you? Qi Zhenbai asked flatly while Zhu Bucheng was lost in thought. Zhu Bucheng didn't think too much of it either and instinctively took them out of his pocket, asking, Here. What's wrong? He then watched as Qi Zhenbai took 5 of the 10 remaining talismans and one of the 3 jade pendants, and put them into the inner pocket of his suit. He then closed his eyes and leaned on the car seat for a nap. Ah! You robbed! Zhu Bucheng was stunned, but then protested aloud after he snapped out of it. So what? Qi Zhenbai's pitch-black eyes were like 2 shooting stars piercing sternly, his tone dangerous. Zhu Bucheng was immediately terrified and felt a throbbing pain in his heart. He could understand. Sister Shuyan's talismans were so useful. How could Zhenbai not be impressed? On the surface, he was indifferent and unruffled, but maybe, he had long set his sights on taking advantage of his generosity. Chapter 57. Shattered Moral Integrity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Qi Zhenbai kneaded his brows, looking somewhat exhausted. Boss, the ticket is scheduled for this afternoon. Is it too early? Assistant Su Sudong worriedly looked at Qi Zhenbai's weary face. No, just set. Qi Zhenbai, who casually glanced out the car window, suddenly saw a pretty, familiar figure standing at the bus stop, and his words came to a sudden halt. Pull over. Qi Zhenbai shouted blankly, his obscure, slender eyes dark and gloomy. In the car, the bodyguards and assistant Su Sudong were disconcerted, but the car was still parked in response. Boss, what's wrong? Su Sudong looked in bewilderment at his boss who was acting strangely. Wait in the car. Qi Zhenbai opened the door and stepped out of the car with his long, lean legs, and headed back towards the stop sign they just passed. A lot of people were waiting at the stop sign, and when they saw Qi Zhenbai, who was tall and upright, and dressed in a trim, costly suit, both men and women gazed at him in curiosity and awe. Qi Zhenbai ignored these gazes and walked to Qi Shuyan, who was standing on her tiptoes looking in the distance for her bus. Feeling a sharp gaze, Qi Shuyan reflexively looked over her shoulder and saw a man with clustered, round loads of purple qi, and her eyes flashed with surprise. Going home. Qi Zhenbai's voice was cold and deep, like spring water under a pine tree. Qi Shuyan nodded even though she was baffled. She noticed immediately that Qi Zhenbai's car was parked a short distance behind him. Since it's on the way, get in the car and I'll send you back. No emotion could be seen on Qi Zhenbai's face as he spoke naturally. Ha! No, thanks. The bus is coming soon. Why is he so cordial? Qi Shuyan was dazed. I'll agree to your last request. Qi Zhenbai knitted his eyebrows, looking somewhat fidgety. Ha! Qi Shuyan failed to grasp his meaning for a moment. What request? Qi Zhenbai tsged. Although his angular face remained impassive, his slender eyes that were as cold as ice blades, instantly stared at Qi Shuyan with a sense of reproach. Qi Shuyan immediately recalled her request to calculate Qi Zhenbai's fortune in the restaurant last time. She comprehended at once and smiled, teasing snappily, "You cherish your words like gold too much. How was I supposed to understand when you suddenly say something like this?" Qi Zhenbai was startled at the sight of Qi Shuyan's smile with her brows bent and feline eyes curved into crescent moons. Of course, she was normally very beautiful, especially when she suddenly smiled, but now she looked even more beautiful and lovely, with a voice so sweet, so melodious, and so delicate. Qi Zhenbai regained his senses, ignoring his inexplicably fast heartbeat, and knitted his brows a bit. This young girl was really insatiable and shameless, seizing the opportunity to seduce him again in public. Qi Zhenbai's frown deepened when he noticed that others' eyes were frequently directed at Qi Shuyan. He turned sideways to block her, taking a step closer, until he tightly covered Qi Shuyan, who was petite and dainty. Only then did Qi Zhenbai notice the huge difference in their bodies. Qi Shuyan was so taken aback by Qi Zhenbai's further intrusion that she took a small step backwards. Frankly, they were too close. Aren't you going to calculate? Qi Zhenbai raised a thick eyebrow. Calculate. Of course, I will. Qi Shuyan could barely maintain her composure. Honestly, she wasn't that curious, but Qi Zhenbai's incalculable and empty divinatory symbols were one of the few that sparked her interest. She had been wondering how to calculate his fortune again, but didn't expect that the opportunity would come so soon. Get in the car. Qi Zhenbai was finally satisfied and glanced at Qi Shuyan, his tone irrefutable. The two got in the car. Qi Shuyan sat firmly before asking, "What is your birth date?" Since the last character calculation didn't work, she took a different approach this time. After she asked, silence reigned in the car. She tilted her head somewhat suspiciously, "Can't I ask?" Su Sudong, who was in the front passenger seat, was surprised when he saw Boss bringing over a girl. Boss was aloof and indifferent, and distant to women's charms, even to those heiresses from many big families who frequently ate in rows at Boss's place. He had never imagined that in just a few days, his boss could get acquainted with such a girl. In particular, Su Sudong's face twisted when he heard Qi Shuyan's question. What was wrong with this girl's questioning? She had stepped on Boss's minefield. As far as he knew, Boss's birthdate characters were very special and extremely confidential. Anyway, he'd seen a few people who didn't know any better and had asked about it, then they never appeared in front of Boss again. However, he was struck when Qi Zhenbai not only didn't glare as coldly as he used to, but also seemingly placated with a "it's inconvenient." Qi Shuyan was dazed and speechless. She definitely couldn't foretell a character and now couldn't calculate his birth characters as well. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. There was actually another way to calculate more accurately. Qi Shuyan glanced at the man beside her, who was dressed in an impeccable suit, out of the corner of her eye, and thought to herself. Perhaps this divination won't work again. But she was reluctant to give up. As they turned a sharp bend, the car jolted, so she seized the opportunity and leaned over, grabbing Qi Zhenbai's wrist. However, Qi Zhenbai, who had always been vigilant, flinched away from Qi Shuyan's little, pervert hand without batting an eyelid. Qi Shuyan was stunned and felt a bit guilty. She didn't even grab him. This man was too vigilant. Could it be that he was guarding himself against her, a female rogue? Qi Shuyan gritted her teeth. As they stopped abruptly at a traffic light, she squeezed to the left this time along with the force of inertia. With a clear goal, she was bound to grab Qi Zhenbai's arm or hand. Unfortunately, there were too many variables in the world. Her quickly outstretched hand was supposed to grab Qi Zhenbai's arm. However, seeing that she had been quiet for a while, Qi Zhenbai adjusted his posture and turned sideways. Thus, her outstretched arm directly pressed against his chest. Qi Shuyan only felt an inexplicable suction and her body plunged right into Qi Zhenbai's chest. She was instantly stupefied. By heaven and hell, she really wasn't trying to take advantage of him. Su Sudong and the bodyguards in the front row witnessed this scene through the rearview mirror and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This little girl might have been very young, but she had real guts. Qi Zhenbai was also stunned. Feeling the soft fragrance of the body in his arms, he was momentarily lost for words. When he came back to his senses, he moved to push her away with both hands. Qi Shuyan sensed that Qi Zhenbai would push her, so without restraint, she brazenly clung to stay. She hurriedly calmed her heart down, emptied her mind, and performed a quick calculation. In a split second, countless images flashed through her mind. These many and diverse images flickered too fast for her to see, but she didn't panic. She focused her thoughts and sure enough, the pictures flowed much slower, like a movie playing. She was looking at a European-style, king-sized bed with a man and a woman wearing only bath towels next to the bed. The tall, upright man was holding the petite girl and kissing her fiercely, as if trying to smush her. The images shifted sharply, and the tall man kissed and pressed the girl onto the bed. Qi Shuyan was stupefied, having never ever expected to see such an intimate scene. But she had already seen it all to this extent. She felt embarrassed and her cheeks flushed all the while trying desperately to get a better look at the girl's face. But the man's tall body enveloped her tightly, especially his arched back muscles, which were taut like a leopard about to sprint for the kill. He kissed the girl underneath him ravenously, as if to tear her apart and swallow her into his belly. Qi Shuyan's fair face was suffused with embarrassment. She wasn't a pervert and had no interest in breaching people's privacy. Well, a little bit. But the problem was that she couldn't control and fast-forward these images, so she could only watch passively. Have you hugged enough? The clear and deep male voice sounded with an imperceptible hint of either happiness or anger. Qi Shuyan was intimidated and quickly backed away. Probably because she felt too guilty, she was unable to keep her balance and knocked her head on the glass. Qi Zhenbai reached out to tug on her arm and asked, "Are you okay?" The moment he made contact, the images in Qi Shuyan's mind started again. This time, the images were even more explosive than before, such that she felt like she was being blinded. You. Qi Shuyan was about to yank her hand off, when she suddenly saw herself coming out of the bathroom in some kind of cat-ear cosplay outfit and obediently kneeling under a man's suit pants and calling out, "Daddy." Qi Shuyan. How bad is my life going to be in the future? How could I actually be so indecent? Chapter 58. Ching, these superstitions can't be trusted. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhu Bucheng, wearing sunglasses, waited at the airport for half a day without seeing Qi Zhenbai. He made a phone call and learned that Qi Zhenbai would be leaving in another day, so he had to board the plane ahead. Sitting in the first-class seat of the plane, he sighed a little. In fact, after going home yesterday and listening to what Qi Shuyan had said, the more he pondered, the more uneasy he felt. He couldn't be blamed for being suspicious. The timing of the chime's delivery was too inopportune. Also, He Yuanjing's fervent attitude in repeatedly urging him to hang it up was just too strange. He removed the wind chime and kept it in a box, thinking about asking Qi Shuyan about it the next day. Before he had time to ask, however, the bloody life-threatening serial call came over, and Zhu Bucheng's mother nagged at him until his whole head ballooned. He had no choice and reluctantly promised to go home early tomorrow. "Zhu residence, you brat, you still know how to come home." Mother Zhu was both happy and reproachful. Zhu Bucheng hastily hugged his mother and sweetly coaxed, "Mom, of course, I'll come home. You don't know how much I missed you. I couldn't eat or sleep well outside, and I drool when I think of your cooking every day. You still have some conscience left." Mother Zhu chuckled and scolded. Noting that Zhu Buqing had indeed lost a lot of weight compared to before, looking tired with dark circles under his eyes, she was terribly distressed. I'll make you a table full of your favorite food tonight to fill you up. Look how thin you are. Seeing Zhu Buqing being lovey-dovey with Mother Zhu, Father Zhu coughed a few words to this conscienceless son in feigned majesty to lecture him, when you come back, you're not in good shape. You're really a failure despite your mother's loving care. I say, old man, it's indeed the person who gave birth to you who should be distressed. Mother Zhu had a toothache when she thought of the workaholic, Qi Zhenbai. That child was notorious for being aggressive and a perfectionist. As an elder, she was a bit scared of him. What's more, her son, Qingqing, had always been wayward. She couldn't imagine how much he must have suffered under Zhenbai. You've just spoiled this boy, Buqing. If he can't stand even this much pain, how can he inherit the company? Father Zhu snorted, if he can learn 3 or 4 pieces of superficial knowledge of Zhenbai's prowess, I'll be satisfied. Mother Zhu gave it a thought. Although she had a thick filter on her child, Qi Zhenbai was indeed stellar among the younger generation of rich and powerful families. He was a rare personage who was hard to come by, with outstanding means. His company management was first-class. Zhu Buqing had long been accustomed to the little flirtations and bickering of his parents from time to time. He took out 2 yellow talismans and handed them over as if presenting a treasure. Dad, Mom, I have a gift for you. I met a very powerful master in Fuzhou, and these are the safety talismans she gave me. We happen to have 3 in the family, so 1 for each of us. They're extraordinarily effective. Master. Mother Zhu looked suspiciously at her excited son. Why did you buy talismans when you're perfectly fine? Because they're useful, of course. Mom, you don't know how expensive this one sheet is. The original price was 100,000. Master gave me a discount because of my friendship with her and I only paid 30,000. Zhu Buqing answered. Father Zhu's facial muscles twitched, finding it hard to express himself in just a few words while looking at his own son. His fleshy face ached at the sight of these rotten sheets of paper that cost 60,000. The more he looked, the more he wanted to smack this stupid kid. What a wastrel. Mother Zhu was also somewhat dumbfounded. These 3 pieces of paper were that expensive. It would have been fine if they were really effective, but as soon as she heard Zhu Buqing's arguments, she thought it was impossible. The boy must have been tricked by that charlatan. But looking at Zhu Buqing's oddly happy appearance, she didn't want to splash cold water on him. Noticing her husband's face, she hurriedly pinched him covertly. Qingqing, you just came back, so hurry up and take a shower. I'll make you your favorite dishes tonight. Oh, all right. Dad, Mom, remember to bring it with you. Zhu Buqing repeatedly instructed, watching Mom and Dad put them on with his own eyes before leaving. At the dining table, Zhu Buqing stuffed himself with food under his mother's eager gaze. Eat slowly. Look how hungry you are. You must have not eaten well outside. Old man, our company isn't for display. Why did you have to send Qingqing to Zhenbai's place for training? It would have been nice if he entered our company. Mother Zhu looked distressed. Father Zhu snorted. Short-sighted, do you know how many people want to get close to Zhenbai? I'd be perfectly satisfied learning smatterings. Mother Zhu still wanted to argue, but Zhu Buqing hurriedly interjected, Mom, there is actually nothing bad about being at Zhenbai's place. Mother Zhu rolled her eyes at Zhu Buqing and scoffed while smiling. I'm only distressed because of you. You follow each other around like this and that who don't know would think you two are brothers. She just blurted it out, when she suddenly remembered something inside somewhat gloomily, sigh, if only your big brother was still alive. It would have been nice if you had a brother to help you out, so you wouldn't have to be under so much pressure. When Zhu Buqing heard her, he bounced out of his chair with a thud, almost overturning his chair in shock. Mom, what are you talking about? What big brother? Zhu Buqing had always thought that he was an only child. Upon hearing this information, he couldn't believe his ears. Qingqing, you've grown up and we have nothing to hide from you. You had a big brother who was born healthy. We never would have thought that, he would die before he was even a year old. Mother Zhu restrained her sorrow. Zhu Buqing looked at Mother Zhu gingerly, changing the subject while he couldn't help but anxiously seek confirmation. Mom, did I hurt my hand playing with firecrackers once when I was a kid? And, did I encounter a fire accident? Mother Zhu was somewhat nonplussed. The subject had jumped too fast, but she still shuddered in retrospect at the memory of how dangerous those times were. Yeah, I thought you'd forgotten. You weren't even named Zhu Buqing back then, but the character Yen. After these two incidents, your father hurriedly crossed out the Yen in your name and purposely chose an earth character, Zheng, for you, which restrains fire. Zhu Buqing's eyes widened instantly, his face filled with disbelief and overwhelming excitement. Remembering how skeptical he was toward what Sister Xu Yan had told him in the restaurant, he didn't expect to confirm it so soon. She was too awesome. Anything that Sister Xu Yan said or did was extraordinary. Considering that this talisman also saved his life, Zhu Buqing was completely convinced, so he told his parents right away, Mom, Dad, you must carry the talisman I gave you properly every day. It isn't just an ordinary item. Then, he remembered that Junbai didn't believe her either and felt obligated to rectify Sister Xuyan's name. Unable to withstand his parents' skepticism, as if he'd been cheated, he hurriedly abandoned his rice bowl and made a phone call. Junbai, we're wrong about Sister Xuyan. She's a real expert, a master. No, I've always believed that Sister Xuyan is a master. Now, I believe in living celestial beings. She's so accurate. When Zhu Buqing called, Qi Zhenbai was sitting on the leather sofa, pondering the reason for Qi Xuyan's desertion. His keen instinct told him that she had seen something, but concealed it. Zhu Buqing didn't give Qi Zhenbai any room to speak at all and recounted everything that had just happened at home. Qi Zhenbai caressed the corner of his temples, listening to the crackling voice on the phone. He almost hung up, but when he heard the words concerning Qi Xuyan, he listened seriously. Qi Zhenbai's icy, slender eyes flickered with shock, then became dim, deep, and serene. Zhenbai, why aren't you silent? Are you listening? Anything else? Qi Zhenbai rudely hung up after listening. On the other end, Zhu Buqing was confused. Did Zhenbai believe him? Zhu Buqing hadn't pondered it yet, but Mother Zhu couldn't help but come and speak to him. Qingqing, these superstitions can't be trusted. Nowadays, those who say they're masters, are all liars. Your dad and I have encountered many before. Don't ever trust any master. Just as Mother Zhu finished speaking, Father Zhu cursed in rage, unable to contain himself. Rascal, did you forget everything you learned at school? Not only are you not focusing on your studies, but you are telling me that you are believing in some master. You're such a disappointment. Chapter 59. A Marriage Made in Heaven. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Qi Xuyan lay sprawled across the bed, blankly staring up at the ceiling and recalling the images in her head today. She felt really embarrassed and inexplicably strange. She was embarrassed that this fortune-telling was only going to be another one of those times when Qi Zhenbai regarded her as rogue, who took advantage of him, and a dabbling warlock. It was strange that she had the audacity to get involved in that sort of relationship with Qi Zhenbai. Thinking back to how cute she was dressed in some sort of seductive cosplay lingerie, she had never even thought she could possibly be someone's legal wife. Was she really going to be this man's mistress in the future? Qi Xuyan frowned, feeling a headache and some confusion. They'd never crossed paths at all in her past life. Was this a butterfly effect of her rebirth? A domino effect? Recalling the intimate scenes she had seen, Qi Shuyan still couldn't believe that she was carried away kissing a man, let alone kneeling in front of some guy's suit pants and calling him daddy. Furthermore, the picture of the hungry man who was impossibly ravenous and exuding a crushing autocracy turned out to be Qi Zhenbai. Before seeing those images, it never occurred to her that she would have any involvement with Qi Zhenbai, thinking that he was just a passer-by, not even as a friend. That man always had a frigid expression when he looked at her, one filled with disdain due to his OCD and abstinent front. If she hadn't seen those images, she might have suspected that he liked men. Honestly, up to this point, she still thought that Qi Zhenbai would be short-lived. If not, he would either be gay or live a solitary life. As for her, she was even more clueless about relationships and marriage, and had no room for them. She couldn't imagine having a relationship with Qi Zhenbai in the future, nor did she want to, let alone that sort of indescribable indecent relationship. He'd probably think the same if he knew about it. Qi Shuyan felt it would be better to stay away from him to avoid suspicion in the future. Although he was outstanding and stunning enough, it was obvious that he was lucky with the ladies but non-committal. She was also afraid of trouble and would rather live a solitary life than be a widow. Qi residents, you're finally willing to come back. Our family has been worried sick about you. As soon as Master Qi knew his grandson was back, he immediately scolded him. You're not cherishing and taking care of your body well. Can't you delay the company matters for a while? I know, Grandpa. Qi Zhenbai smiled and said gently. Grandpa Qi's bellyful of a raging lecture had come to an abrupt end. Looking at this most brilliant and ambitious grandson, he couldn't be ruthless. Seeing that his complexion was pretty good, his anger vanished. Celestial Master Zhang will come tomorrow to check the feng shui of our ancestral tomb and check your body to better condition it. After blowing his top, he walked away. Master Qi said so, but when Celestial Master Zhang came to the door, he asked him to treat his grandson, Qi Zhenbai, first and check his body to condition it. Has your cold ailment flared up recently? Celestial Master Zhang's eyes were filled with surprise. The Qi family had been urging Qi Zhenbai to come back, in fear that his cold ailment would recur in Fuzhou. Qi Zhenbai was slightly shocked. He used to have a seizure once every 6 months, but it had gotten worse now and the frequency changed to once a month. But it seemed that this month had passed, yet he never had that feeling of being ice-cold all the time. I've seen the prescription and it's really wonderful. Fuzhou is indeed a place filled with hidden masters, with capable people appearing one after another. Celestial Master Zhang wasn't shy in his praise. It seems that your recovery is just around the corner. Celestial Master Zhang said so on the surface, but he was filled with doubts in his heart. Although this prescription seemed to suppress his cold ailment, how could it still be effective in curing him? There was no doubt that Qi Zhenbai's health has improved. Qi Zhenbai keenly captured Celestial Master Zhang's subtle expression and fell in deep thought. Celestial Master Zhang, are you saying that karma and the supernatural really exist in the world? Although Qi Zhenbai had known that Celestial Master Zhang was a feng shui master, he classified him under the umbrella of Chinese medicine. Before, Celestial Master Zhang only spoke to his grandpa about his condition and some specific things. Ever since he came into contact with Qi Shuyan, however, he realized that there were many things that science couldn't explain. Naturally, there's karma. You reap what you sow. A person is born with a fixed destiny, but can also alter it through acquired efforts. A man of excellent fortune will soon lose his luck if he doesn't know how to cherish it. Similarly, an unlucky person can turn the tides. Celestial Master Zhang smiled. As for the supernatural, it's up to you whether to believe in it or not. It seems that young Master Qi believes after your trip. Qi Zhenbai impassively raised his slender eyes that were as quiet as deep pools. He hadn't said anything before, but in Bucheng's case, he also knew that the little girl was skilled and extraordinary. In the past, if someone had told him that a talisman could save someone from danger, he would never have believed it. Recalling her two empty divinations, his eyes narrowed. He looked up and suddenly asked, if a real celestial master tells fortunes, but the divination comes out blank, why could that be? There are two scenarios in which what young Master Chi mentioned could happen. 1. The celestial master isn't powerful enough. As for the other, he calculated it, but it's too embarrassing to mention and can't be spoken of. The latter may have many strings attached. All I can say is that the celestial master probably has a close destiny with young Master Chi. Celestial Master Zhang clarified in one stop. Looking at young Master Chi's wooden face in front of him, he took a rare moment to tease, if the celestial master is a magnificent girl, she might be destined for marriage with young Master Chi. Qi Zhenbai's dim eyes flickered and completely didn't believe that he would have any ties with her, much less a marriage made in heaven. Father Zhu went to work in the company as usual and held a regular meeting. While listening to various department heads reporting their quarterly sales, an assistant suddenly walked in and handed him a phone. Father Zhu frowned. Seeing that the number above was his family's private landline, he thought it was Zhu Buchen, that rascal, who was in trouble again. Otherwise, Mother Zhu wouldn't normally call at this time. However, when he picked up the phone, he found out that it was Mother Zhu, who had an accident. The housekeeper on the phone said that she rolled down the stairs and was taken to the hospital. Father Zhu was scared out of his wits, knowing how steep and high their stairs at home were. In addition, Mother Zhu was old and her limbs and body weren't particularly good. If she rolled down the steps with those old limbs, suffering a fracture would be considered just a minor injury. And if she had hit something sharp displayed in the living room, that would really be terrible. Father Zhu didn't dare to think deeper, hurriedly asking his assistant to take charge of the next meeting, and went straight to the parking lot. Hospital, Madame Zhu, after a series of examinations, the report shows that you're perfectly fine and can be discharged. The doctor in the lab coat supported Mother Zhu in the ward and informed her gently. He spoke flatly, but his eyes never left Mother Zhu in the bed. If she and the housekeeper hadn't both sworn that she rolled down from the second floor, he really wouldn't have believed it. Forget about her old age, even a normal person would have suffered a broken bone or a swollen leg, if not seriously injured, rolling down the second floor. But Mother Zhu had no injuries at all, not even a minor one. After thinking about it further, the white-clad doctor found it very strange. What a divine blessing! The housekeeper was amazed and grinned happily in exultation. It must be because Madame frequently donates. Good people are rewarded. The nanny still shuddered at the thought of the spine-tingling scene she saw when she came out of the kitchen and saw Mother Zhu falling down the stairs. She didn't expect to rush Mother Zhu to the hospital, but she wasn't hurt at all. Never mind Mother Zhu's age, even a young person falling from that height would probably spend many days bedridden. Mother was also astonished. In fact, when she fell down the stairs, she didn't feel much pain. She purely scared herself and thought that she'd been paralyzed. A blue and white porcelain vase next to her shattered as a result of her fall, but she wasn't hurt at all. It felt like something had protected her from danger. So, are all the tests done? Is she okay? Father Zhu, who just stepped in gasping for a breath, asked the doctor anxiously. But after seeing that Mother Zhu was fine he calmed down a bit. Chapter 60. Zhenbai, how about I marry Sister Shuyan? You are listening at novelfull.audio. The doctor in the lab coat nodded seriously. Yes, Madame Qi has been examined thoroughly. Let alone a sequelae, she doesn't even have common bruises. After some contemplation, the doctor could only attribute this to luck and softer stares. Father Zhu thanked the doctor and hurried to Mother Zhu's bedside to ask what had happened. How could she have rolled down the stairs from the second floor? I just went out shopping with my sisters today and sprained my foot while going up the second floor while wearing my stilettos. I stumbled and fell down the stairs. Mother Zhu palpitated and was horrified at the memory. I accidentally knocked over a blue and white porcelain vase in the living room and it shattered all over the floor. I was lying on it when Aunt Wang came over to help me up. But I was totally fine and unharmed. Father Zhu questioned Mother Zhu again, and the more he pondered the details, the more he felt that something was terribly off. He felt that this incident wasn't just a fluke. Being questioned by Father Zhu, Mother Zhu recalled the thrill at that moment and also felt somewhat puzzled that she was unscathed and in perfect condition. Luck bore wisdom. She suddenly remembered the talisman that her son insisted on giving to her. She pulled it off her neck and was stunned to see several golden lines on the talisman, one of which had turned gray. Although Mother Zhu didn't believe the talisman had any effect, in the end, it was her son's wish. Even if her son gave her a piece of rotten paper, she would be willing to wear it, so she didn't throw the talisman away like Father Zhu did. Father Zhu also saw Mother Zhu's action and was about to reprimand her for following her son's example and engaging in futile superstitions, but having the sharp eyes of a businessman, he spotted the difference at once. This talisman looks a bit different. One of the golden lines on it had darkened. Mother Zhu took a closer look and saw the difference, and agreed in surprise. It's really different. Old man, look, the golden line on it has darkened. No, I have to call my son and ask him what's going on. When Mother Zhu called Zhu Bucheng, he was arguing with Qi Yunxian, the damned brat. Qi Yunxian was the son of Qi Zhenbai's third uncle. Or Qi Zhenbai's cousin. You call this capitalizing on one's seniority? Why should I give them to you when it's so obvious I spent tremendous effort to snap them up? Qi Yunxian was filled with grievances. How did Brother Zhu know that these talismans were so good? The rest of the family took him for a miscreant and a superstitious man. Respect the old and cherish the young, I know. I'm only asking you to give me a few sheets, brat. Zhu Bucheng gave Qi Yunxian a flick on the forehead and threatened, if you don't, I'll tell your brother that you still play games every day with the college entrance exam coming up. You're ruthless. Qi Yunxian sighed petulantly. I can only give you 2. That's more like it. Zhu Bucheng nodded his head in satisfaction. Remembering the last time Qi Zhenbai blackmailed him repeatedly, he wasn't at all ashamed of bullying a child. Zhu Bucheng sneaked into the Qi family mansion today to find Qi Zhenbai, but missed him. He called and found out that Qi Zhenbai had run to the company after several days of absence. After a curt reply, he gave up the idea of looking for that workaholic and settled for the second best, finding Qi Zhenbai's cousin, Qi Yunxian. As soon as Zhu Bucheng entered the door, he heard the voice of the teenager in the room constantly swearing and tapping the mouse and keyboard. He thought it was Qi Yunxian secretly playing games again, but the moment he got close enough, he saw him snapping up talismans and magical weapons on Taobao. Looking closely, wasn't that the same store that Sister Shuyan shared with him? Zhu Bucheng visited the store several times and the goods that Sister Shuyan had for sale weren't few, but demands exceeded the supply. He was aghast when he didn't snap up even one. He watched Qi Yunxuan's fingers fly and grab talismans quickly with a grin, waiting until he grabbed a few, before finding out from this brat's mouth how many he had snapped up. Thus, the scene earlier. When he saw 5 or 6 talismans in this brat's hand that were exactly like the ones in his eyes almost popped out as he was downright envious. He gave Zhenbai only a few talismans, but this kid actually had so many. It turned out that this kid had long known the benefits of these talismans and Sister Shuyan's store. This wouldn't work. Whenever he was free, he had to curry favor with Sister Shuyan. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have any talismans. Having gotten a few now, Zhu Bucheng was in a much better mood and answered Mother Zhu's call, perfectly satisfied and delighted. He was shocked to learn that his mother had fallen from the 2nd floor and was hospitalized, but after hearing that she was unharmed, he breathed a sigh of relief and rushed to the hospital. Mom, did you wear the safety talisman I gave you? Zhu Bucheng hurriedly asked the moment he rushed into the ward. Mother Zhu and Father Zhu looked at each other in disbelief. Is it really related to the yellow safety talisman? Mother Zhu pulled out the safety talisman around her neck and nodded. I've always been wearing it. It seems to have golden lines on it. Did a master really give you this? After determining that she was really fine and not the least bit injured, Zhu Buqing grinned broadly. Sister Shuyan's talisman is really very effective. Confirming that this talisman was really precious, he again felt that the few talismans he had just squeezed back in his hand were still too few. Few people knew about the benefits of this talisman. Once everyone knew, he could already see people going after it like a flock of ducks. It was a protective goodie. What could be more important than protecting one's own life? I must make very good friends with Sister Shuyan. Zhu Buqing thought to himself as he looked up and saw both his parents looking at him. He sighed. I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid you'd be worried. Zhu Buqing immediately told them his misfortunes in Fuzhou and how he had escaped unscathed from his car accident. Mother and Father Zhu gaped, filled with incredulity. His car fell under an overpass, exploded, burned down to its frames, and their son still survived. If it weren't their own son in front of them, they would have thought they were listening to some kind of tale. Nevertheless, Mother Zhu snapped back to her senses first and pulled Zhu Buqing, inspecting him from top to bottom, her heart trembling in fear. How did you encounter such a thing, Qingqing? I won't allow you to drive next time. I'll give you a driver. Father Zhu shuddered at the thought of such a perilous car accident. If his son hadn't run into that expert and didn't have a protective talisman, he'd likely have died. No matter how shrewd he was, it would have been difficult for him to escape such an underhanded plot, and this was from a poisonous mind that wanted to harm his son. Son, you must remember to wear this talisman properly and never take it off. Don't take it off even in the shower if possible. Mother Zhu panicked and instructed. Of course, I'll wear it well. Dad, Mom, rest assured. Seeing his parents scared like this, Zhu Buqing jested, besides, the scourge lives for a millennium. Your son's life is long. I still have to give you your pension and stay with you forever, so how can I leave? With Zhu Buqing's jest, the atmosphere eased up a lot, and Father and Mother Zhu's minds were put at rest. Just as Father Zhu breathed a sigh of relief, he saw the talisman around Mother Zhu's neck and his face tensed up again, remembering the talisman he had tossed on the bedside table. Fortunately, he hadn't dumped it. Otherwise, how profligate would he have been? His shrewd eyes glowed, thinking inwardly how useful this talisman was. It seemed that he had to put it on without delay, lest something happened. With his old arms and legs like Mother Zhu's, there was no telling when something might happen. These thoughts quickly crossed his mind and he grumbled, Buqing, this talisman is so useful, so why didn't you buy more, you brat? He just heard this rascal say that this talisman had a limited number of uses. A line would darken once used and when all the golden lines on it turned black, it would be useless. Dad. Zhu Buqing looked at Father Zhu helplessly, do you think I don't want to? But this talisman is limited. It's hard to even buy them now. Father Zhu instinctively wanted to scold this rascal for being incompetent, but Zhu Buqing's eyes twinkled, and he suddenly had a flash of wisdom. Dad, how about I'll marry this master as your daughter. In law. Just as Zhu Buqing finished speaking, he was about to add something when his phone rang. He pulled it out and saw Zhenbai's number on the screen. He couldn't be bothered to talk to Father Zhu and quickly picked it up. Without waiting for Zhenbai to speak, he said quite excitedly, Zhenbai, what do you think of me marrying Sister Shuyan as my wife? Whatever you need in the future, shall I let my wife resolve it?